right, so we've been talking about how all of the work that we've done over the course of this unit has been leading up to really today. And the reason is because you just read this short story, The Elevator, and your goal now is to take all the learning we've done over the course of the unit about suspense strategies, about dialogue, about tone, about just how writers kind of craft horror stories, and now it's your turn to write an ending of a story. So before we get into like the full, you're writing your own story and planning that, let's do a small practice of, well, let's take this story that's already been written and let's change the cliffhanger to have a resolution. And so right now the author has left us off on this cliffhanger where we aren't really sure what's going to happen next. And so our job is to write the rest. Like, how do we want this story to end, or how could it end, um, to still seem realistic, but also engaging and interesting for you, specifically the writer. And so today you've been given a alternate ending writing assignment guide. It looks like this paper here on the left side of the screen. And for the assignment, you're going to be tasked with becoming an author of your own, because now that we've learned all these techniques and craft moves, it's your turn to kind of put that learning to the test. And so you have some requirements that you're going to need to complete. The first is that I want you to complete a pre-writing. And basically what this is, it's a pre-writing brainstorm. Kind of gets you just thinking of some ideas of, based on what we know about this story, what are some kind of realistic or logical ways that this story could end. Now, obviously, we don't want to add anything like brand new to the story or take the story in a wildly new direction. So it does have to be, logical and realistic, but there's a lot of different ways that this story can go. And so I want you to just sort of think creatively today when you do your brainstorm about, like, based on where we've left off in this story, like, what different directions could the author have taken if they finished it? And so the very first thing you're going to do today is complete the pre-writing brainstorm. I'm going to show you what that looks like. It looks like this. You should be getting this from the sub today. And basically what it does is it asks you just a couple of things to be thinking about before you actually go into the writing of your story ending. So first is, well, what is the ending of the original story? For example, our story doesn't have a resolution. So what is, quote unquote, the ending of this story, even if it's a cliffhanger? What was missing for you? Like, I know sometimes we get really frustrated when we read stories and it leaves off at a cliffhanger because we feel so incomplete. Like, it feels so incomplete. So our job then is to say, well, what was missing? What were the parts of this story that would have made it better or could have made it more exciting that perhaps you can add to your ending here? And then last but not least, before we just kind of dive into the writing and choosing one ending that we want to write about, I want you to brainstorm three possible endings. So, what are just like three really short descriptions of ways that this story could have ended, just so that you have all the ideas sort of in your bank of options here? And then by the very end, once you're done with the brainstorm, you're going to choose one. So, of the three really cool ideas that you've come up with about how this story could end, which is the one that you're going to kind of take the long route on and actually write that ending? And so the brainstorm has to come first. Yes, it does have to be complete. Even if you already have a really cool idea, this brainstorm still needs to be written down, and three different ideas need to be thought of before you can land yourself on one. So back to the directions here. So you've been asked to complete the pre-writing brainstorm. Once you're all finished with the brainstorm, um, you have some writing requirements that you must complete when you write your alternate ending to this story. And guys, those are listed on your directions paper. They're down here. So there's 4 directions that you must follow. I'm going to go over those super quick, and then we'll talk about how you might decide to write today. So, for this assignment, your story ending must showcase that you are using at least three different suspense techniques. So, over the course of the unit, we've learned about point of view, we've learned about foreshadowing, we've learned about time constraints, sensory details, so on and so forth. When you write your story ending to the elevator, you must include at least three examples of one of those suspense techniques somewhere. Um, Moving on to step number two, you must include various examples of sensory details in order to describe like the setting or the characters or the events. We talked a little bit about how sensory details is should be really just sort of embedded throughout the entire story to help us feel like we're ever present in the story. So not only do you have to use three suspense techniques, but you also need to be embedding lots of really cool sensory detail throughout to make us feel like we're there. Next, you must include dialogue between your characters. So one of the things you learned this week is about how to properly write dialogue within a story. You need to make sure that when you add dialogue to your story ending that it's realistic. So if you have characters talking, you need to make it actually sound like something they would say and tell us how they're saying it and what are they doing while they are saying it, just to make this story realistic and believable. And then lastly, your story ending should be a realistic and logical ending. And guys, the requirement is that this must be a minimum of one full page long. And so to go off of that full page long, you have some options today. Once you're done with your pre-writing brainstorm, you can, share with a partner and kind of talk about how your story ending's going to go and get advice and whatnot. But then you need to decide how you want to write. I know some of you really like to handwrite things. So you're welcome to handwrite your story if you'd like on notebook paper. But again, it does need to be at least one full page long and meet the requirements. Or you can type your story. I've posted a blank Google document in Google Classroom where you can be typing your story on there. And I could kind of see you updating that in real time and give you feedback on that. Again, though, if you do the typing, it must be the full page long, and you may not use a font size any bigger than 12, because at that point, the bigger the font, the more space you're trying to take up. It has to be 12. So, guys, today, now that you've read the story of the elevator, I want you to complete that brainstorm, and you can actually start writing your story today if you want. If not, you're going to have all day tomorrow to write the story, and it is going to be due on Monday. All right. Good luck, guys. I'm so excited to see how this goes, and I'll be back on Monday and we'll go over these. Have a good weekend. Bye.